Hello, modelers. Let's have a quick video on this chapter. So, evolution is not exactly the same as natural selection. That's very confusing. People get them confused. We are talking about natural selection as the process. Okay, so evolution results from mutation, recombination, and drift. All things that we will talk about. This generates variation, right? You get variations. But this is not predictable. This is a random mutation. Evolution is the term we use for changes in gene frequencies over time. So it results from a mutation. The mutation we can't predict. Evolution is something that we're sort of like looking back on and saying, this happened, this happened, this happened, these were the mutations. We can't really predict how something's going to evolve, necessarily. Let's talk about natural selection. Natural selection is the mechanism that drives evolution. So evolution is kind of like looking back and saying, oh, this mutation and then this environmental situation caused this evolutionary tree or evolutionary issue. So natural selection is the mechanism that drives adaptive evolution. Individuals with specific genetics survive and reproduce better. So if you look at Darwin and the birds with beaks that could get different kinds of seeds actually survived. So there were mutations. That mutation meant that bird would survive better. Okay. We need to understand how environment shapes these traits, favoring some traits and not others, so we can also help with the environment and so that we can look at endangered or critical species. Okay, also, ultimate versus proximate hypothesis. Okay, so an ultimate hypothesis explains why something happens. This is like the big why, the like, why? So, why do birds fly south? This is something sort of that, like a child. Why is the sky blue? Why do birds fly south? So the ultimate hypothesis answer to why do birds fly south is that the individual in the species in the region that migrate seasonally survive better. So if you migrate and you don't stay in the cold over the winter, you actually survive better. You don't survive well in the cold because you're a bird, and so you fly south for the winter, causing you to survive. Your species, your family, you survive better if you migrate to the south for some birds. What is the proximate hypothesis is how. How do birds know? How do they fly south? So typically it's change in day length, and that causes a shifting hormone level, which gives them the sort of momentum and metabolism and idea to fly south. And, there's like electrical gradients and magnetic, and there's all kinds of ways that they figure out how to physically do it. So that is the how birds fly south, but not why. The why is an ultimate hypothesis. Do not get those two confused. Okay, we're talking about pesticides now because this is going to be your homework. So pesticide use has increased pretty dramatically in the last 30 years. Has become less effective. What? Why is it less effective? And we're getting better at making it. Here's why. Some reasons are that we decrease the pest. So when you put a pesticide on, you get rid of everything. The good pests and the bad pests. So when we put like methylparathine, which is a real nasty one, you put that on a field, that's going to get rid of everything. Everything living is now dead. You have a cotton plant and nothing alive. Well, we've also decreased the natural predators and this natural cycle. So when you do have someone bust through, so you spray your methylparathine, and let's say you have, in this case, out of a whole field, you have 50 boll weevils, which isn't going to do a ton of damage, right? Maybe 20. You have 20 boll weevils that manage to get past your methylparathine spray. Okay, so those 20 boll weevils mate with each other, and they mate over time. So, yeah, you've got like a little bit. Okay, I had 20 in the whole field, so a few cotton plants is not that big a deal. Those boll weevils mate with each other who are resistant, and now the next year it's less effective because you've had those guys meet and they're the only ones left. The main cause of the evolution of the resistance is the resistance of pesticide. So the main cause is you sprayed it all, 20 survived, those 20 mated, and now they're, after 3 or 4 generations, they are totally resistant to your pesticide. Okay, so same type of example. I gotta get you the whole thing here. Okay, if pesticides are 95% effective, 5% can reproduce and create a new population over time. This is called directional selection. So your pesticide is 95% effective. 5% who survive are resistant, and then over time, they're going to mate with one another. So this matters because the cost of developing resistance is extremely high. The cost of being non-resistant is very high since you actually die. So how often is this field being sprayed? If it's being sprayed all the time, that's different than if it's being sprayed once a year. What's the generational time of a boll weevil? How long before there's a completely new generation of boll weevil? Insects tend to have short lives, but lots of offspring. So this means a lot more chances for variation. So if you have a pesticide, let's say you have a pesticide that's 95% effective, but the Bayer asks you to leave a strip, right? Don't spray the pesticide in one strip of your field. Why? Why would you want to do that? You can pause it and think about it. I'll tell you why. Because in that strip, there will be resistant and non-resistant boll weevils in your strip of cotton or strip of corn or whatever. In that strip, you're just not spraying that. I'm going to let all the beneficial insects, I'm going to let all the non-resistant boll weevils, I'm going to let everybody survive in that one strip. Maybe I use a cheaper corn seed or a cheaper cotton seed in that seed because I know that I'm not going to get good cotton out of it. I'm just going to, and everyone's like, why would you do that? You're just letting the insects breed. That's crazy. It's not. It's preventing systematic resistance. But know that people don't like that. They want it all dead. But when you repeatedly put the pesticide on over and over and over again, you're breeding for resistance. Okay, let's look. I just want to look, real quick. So in your homework for this week, you're going to look at methylparathion and budworm. Essentially, I'm kind of answering the first few questions for you. As you increase the dose of methylparathion, you see that the percentage of budworms killed gets less effective over time. What is happening? Well, essentially, they're evolving. They're using, because we're taking out everybody, the only people left are the ones that are resistant, and they're breeding with each other. You also notice from your book question, the concentration goes up over time just to kill the same amount because you're breeding resistance. The mites in number 3 seem to react a little bit differently to each pesticide. You can look at that in both the sprayed and unsprayed treatments. In number 4, mite population densities basically are between 1 and 5 mites per leaf. The unsprayed area initially has 250 mites, but it was reduced to 0. So when you look at this, when you look at some of the data for number 4, you will see that in some cases it's better not to spray at all because you're killing off the beneficial insects. In the budworm example, I'm going to need you to make a graph. So go ahead and work on your Excel skills. In Canvas, I have a sample graph for you from that. So you can probably answer the next ones. If you have any questions, let me know. But essentially, this is just the very beginning of us talking about resistance over time. Sort of a forced evolution, if you will. We're forcing it to either die or find the ones that have already got the mutation and breed with one another. So let me know if you have any questions, and good luck on your homework. I kind of gave you the answer to most of them anyway.